1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. A Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't just a horror movie about a burned child killer who hunts teenagers in their dreams. It was a desperate filmmaker's last-ditch effort to save his career that accidentally created one of cinema's most enduring monsters. Behind the razor-fingered glove and trademark fedora lay a production plagued by studio skepticism, dangerous practical effects that left actors hospitalized, and a casting process that almost derailed before launching Johnny Depp's career. What audiences didn't know was that Wes Craven filmed in condemned buildings filled with asbestos, used over 500 gallons of fake blood, and watched helplessly as his original Freddy glove vanished forever during production of the sequels. Today we're diving into 20 weird facts about A Nightmare on Elm Street that reveal the chaotic reality behind the dream sequences. And stick around for the bonus fact, it involves a very different Freddy Krueger that almost made it to the screen. Let's enter the nightmare. Fact number 1. The boiler room was actually a condemned jail. The scenes in the boiler room were filmed in the basement of the Lincoln Heights Jail in Los Angeles. After production wrapped, the jail was condemned due to asbestos. Picture this. Wes Craven needs the perfect hellish location for Freddy's domain, and he finds it in an abandoned jail basement that looks like it crawled out of a fever dream. The cast and crew spent days breathing in what would later be confirmed as hazardous air, creating Freddy's lair in a building so dangerous it was demolished shortly after filming. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They were literally filming a nightmare in a place that became uninhabitable. Robert Englund later joked that the building was so creepy, it didn't need any set decoration to feel menacing. Fact number 2. Johnny Depp got cast because of Wes Craven's teenage daughters. One reason Johnny Depp was cast as Nancy's boyfriend, Glenn, was because Wes Craven's daughter thought he was dreamy. Not his acting ability, not his screen presence. Pure teenage infatuation. Craven brought home headshots from auditions, and his daughters immediately pointed to Depp's photo, gushing about how attractive he was. According to an interview, Craven took a chance on Depp for the role because his daughters pushed for him. This wasn't method casting or careful character analysis, it was a father trusting his daughter's taste in heartthrobs. The decision launched one of Hollywood's most successful careers, proving that sometimes the best casting directors are teenage girls with good instincts. Fact number 3. Over 500 gallons of fake blood flooded the set. Over the course of filming A Nightmare on Elm Street, more than 500 gallons of fake blood were used. That's enough blood to fill a small swimming pool. The production turned into a crimson catastrophe, with crew members constantly mopping, cleaning, and replacing blood-soaked costumes. For the famous blood geyser sequence, the filmmakers used the same revolving room set that was used for Tina's death. They put the set so that it was upside down and attached the camera so that gravity would create the effect of blood pouring upward from the bed. Actors arrived on set knowing they'd leave looking like they'd been through a slaughter. The smell of corn syrup and red dye became so overwhelming that some crew members developed nausea just from the odor. Fact number 4. Freddy Krueger was almost played by a respected character actor. Initially, Craven wanted Freddy to be older and sought to cast character actor David Warner, but when this fell through, Robert Englund was cast as Freddy Krueger for the dark energy he brought during an audition. David Warner would have created an entirely different Freddy, more patrician, less gleeful in his evil. Warner was known for playing sophisticated villains with gravitas, not the cackling dream demon that Englund brought to life. When Warner's scheduling didn't work out, Englund auditioned and immediately understood that Freddy needed to be simultaneously terrifying and darkly comedic. The casting change transformed what could have been a standard boogeyman into a character with a twisted personality and memorable one-liners. Fact number 5. The original Freddy glove disappeared and never returned. However, during the production of the trilogy, the glove was lost and never recovered. There's a rumor that Englund's agent has it. Somewhere in Hollywood, the most iconic horror weapon in cinema history sits forgotten in someone's closet or office. Not a replica, not a promotional piece, the actual razor-fingered glove that terrorized a generation. The loss occurred during the chaos of the third film's production, and despite numerous searches and investigations, it vanished like one of Freddy's victims. Englund has joked in interviews that he suspects his agent might have taken it as the ultimate client souvenir, but the truth remains one of horror cinema's greatest unsolved mysteries. Fact number 6. The rotating room death scene nearly killed the stunt double. The infamous Tina death sequence required building a completely rotating room, walls, ceiling, furniture. Everything had to spin while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. The stunt double had to be carefully choreographed and secured as the entire set rotated around her, with fake blood pumps timed precisely to create the effect of supernatural violence. What looked effortless on screen was actually an engineering nightmare that took days to perfect. The rotating mechanism was so complex that it frequently malfunctioned, leaving cast and crew disoriented and occasionally injured. One miscalculation could have sent furniture, equipment, or people flying across the room with deadly force. Fact number 7. New Line Cinema almost went bankrupt before the film's success. New Line Cinema was hanging by a financial thread when they greenlit A Nightmare on Elm Street. The company had been struggling with a series of flops, and this low-budget horror film was essentially their last desperate gamble. Studio executives were so nervous about the project that they interfered constantly, demanding script changes and questioning every creative decision. Robert Shea, New Line's founder, later admitted that if Nightmare had failed, the company would have collapsed completely. Instead, the film's success transformed New Line from a struggling independent distributor into a major Hollywood player, earning them the nickname, "The House That Freddy Built." Fact number 8. Heather Langenkamp did her own dangerous stunts. While many horror films rely heavily on stunt doubles, Heather Langenkamp insisted on performing many of Nancy's most dangerous sequences herself. This included running through the booby-trapped house, the bathtub sequence where she's pulled underwater, and several chase scenes that involved real physical danger. Langenkamp suffered multiple bruises, cuts, and near-drowning incidents during filming, but her commitment to authenticity shows in every terrifying moment. The close-up shots of Nancy's genuine fear reactions weren't acting, they were real responses to actual physical peril. Craven later admitted he was nervous about her insistence on doing her own stunts but admired her dedication. Fact number 9. The script was inspired by newspaper articles about real deaths. Wes Craven didn't invent the concept of dying in your dreams out of thin air. He was inspired by a series of Los Angeles Times articles about Southeast Asian refugees who were dying mysteriously in their sleep, apparently from nightmares so intense they caused fatal heart attacks. These real deaths haunted Craven, who wondered what could be so terrifying in a dream that it could literally kill someone. The concept of dream death became the foundation for Freddy's supernatural ability, grounding the fantastic horror in documented reality. The Hmong community had been reporting these nightmare deaths for years, creating an urban legend that Craven transformed into cinematic terror. Fact number 10. The famous jump rope rhyme was created on set. Before we continue with more shocking facts, go ahead and like and subscribe because there's so much more behind-the-scenes chaos that even die-hard horror fans haven't heard about, and we're just getting started. The haunting children's rhyme, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, wasn't in the original script. It was improvised by the young actresses during filming, created spontaneously as they played jump rope between takes. Craven heard them chanting their made-up verse and immediately recognized its potential as the perfect sinister nursery rhyme. The girls were coached to make it sound more ominous, but the basic rhythm and words came from their natural playground creativity. What started as an innocent child's play became one of horror cinema's most memorable and chilling chants, proving that sometimes the best scares come from unexpected places. Fact number 11. Johnny Depp's famous death scene used gallons of blood and a rotating bed. Johnny Depp's spectacular death, where Glenn is sucked into his bed and erupts in a geyser of blood, required the same rotating room technology used for Tina's death, but turned upside down. The crew built the bedroom set so it could flip completely, allowing gravity to pull hundreds of gallons of fake blood downward, while the camera captured it appearing to spray upward from the mattress. Depp had to be positioned precisely to avoid being drenched by the massive blood cascade, while crew members operated pumps and valves with split-second timing. The effect was so convincing that test audiences gasped audibly, making it one of the film's most memorable practical effects sequences. Fact number 12. Robert Englund based Freddy's voice on his childhood fears. Robert Englund didn't just put on the makeup and start growling. He developed Freddy's distinctive voice by channeling his own childhood nightmares and fears, particularly his terror of a neighborhood drunk who used to frighten local children. Englund studied the speech patterns of disturbed individuals, layering in elements of dark playfulness that made Freddy simultaneously terrifying and perversely charismatic. The actor spent hours perfecting the balance between menace and twisted humor, understanding that Freddy needed to be entertaining even while being horrifying. This careful character work transformed what could have been a standard monster into a complex antagonist with a distinctive personality. Fact number 13. The high school was already famous for other movies. The high school was already famous for other movies. The high school the protagonists attend was filmed at John Marshall High School, where many other productions such as Grease and Pretty in Pink have been filmed. Students walking the halls of John Marshall were already accustomed to film crews, having seen their school transformed into Rydell High for Grease just a few years earlier. The contrast couldn't have been more dramatic. The same hallways that had hosted Danny and Sandy's romance now witnessed Freddy Krueger's supernatural stalking. The school's administration was initially hesitant about hosting a horror production after their positive experience with family-friendly films, but the location fee was too attractive to refuse. Fact number 14. Wes Craven fought studio executives over the ending. New Line Cinema executives hated Craven's ambiguous ending and demanded multiple reshoots to create a more conventional conclusion. The original ending was much darker and more final, but studio interference resulted in the twist ending that sets up sequels. Craven later expressed frustration that his artistic vision was compromised by commercial considerations, but he also acknowledged that the studio's changes inadvertently created the franchise potential that made the film so profitable. The battle over the ending created tension between Craven and New Line that would persist through several sequels, with the director constantly fighting to maintain his creative control. Fact number 15. The makeup effects team had never done a horror movie before. David Miller, the film's makeup effects supervisor, was primarily known for beauty makeup and hadn't worked on a horror production before Nightmare. The inexperience led to countless trial-and-error experiments with Freddy's burned flesh effects, creating innovative techniques that became industry standards. Miller had to invent new methods for creating realistic burn scars, develop the iconic red and green striped sweater burn patterns, and figure out how to make Robert Englund's transformation into Freddy both terrifying and repeatable for multiple takes. The learning curve was steep, with many makeup tests resulting in effects too grotesque or too unconvincing before they found the perfect balance. Fact number 16. Several scenes were cut for being too disturbing. Test audiences were so disturbed by several sequences that Craven was forced to cut them completely, rather than simply trim for ratings. These lost scenes included more graphic depictions of child murder, extended torture sequences in Freddy's boiler room, and additional nightmare sequences that were deemed too psychologically damaging. Some of this footage has never been recovered, existing only in Craven's memory and production stills. The director later said he regretted some of these cuts, feeling they diminished the film's psychological impact, but understood that commercial viability required some restraint in the film's most disturbing elements. Fact number 17. The cast developed genuine friendships that lasted decades. Unlike many horror productions where actors barely interact between takes, the Nightmare cast became genuinely close friends during the intensive 32-day shoot. Principal photography began on June 11, 1984, and lasted a total of 32 days in and around Los Angeles, California. The shared experience of working in dangerous, uncomfortable conditions while creating something genuinely frightening bonded them in ways that typical film productions don't. Heather Langenkamp, Johnny Depp, and Robert Englund maintained friendships long after the film's release, attending horror conventions together and supporting each other's subsequent projects. Their genuine affection for each other shows in their on-screen chemistry and helped ground the supernatural horror in believable human relationships. Fact number 18. The film's success surprised everyone, including Wes Craven. Craven expected Nightmare to be a modest drive-in success at best, hoping it would earn enough to keep his career alive after several commercial disappointments. Nobody predicted that the cultural phenomenon it would become, spawning sequels, merchandise, and transforming Freddy Krueger into a household name. The director was stunned when the film opened at #1 at the box office, earning back its budget in the first weekend. Even more surprising was its longevity. Instead of disappearing after a few weeks like most horror films, Nightmare continued drawing audiences month after month, proving that genuine scares and innovative effects could create lasting entertainment value. Fact number 19. Freddy's burned appearance was based on real medical research. The makeup team didn't rely on imagination alone for Freddy's burn scars. They studied actual medical photographs of burn victims and consulted with physicians to understand how severe burns affect facial structure and skin texture. This research created a level of realism that made Freddy's appearance genuinely disturbing rather than cartoonish. The attention to medical accuracy made audiences unconsciously uncomfortable, as their brains recognized the authenticity of the trauma even when they knew it was makeup. This commitment to realistic horror effects elevated the entire production above typical monster movie standards and contributed significantly to the character's lasting impact. Fact number 20. The film changed horror movie marketing forever. A Nightmare on Elm Street pioneered the marketing strategy of selling the villain as the star rather than the heroes. Previous horror films focused on victims or survivors in their advertising, but New Line Cinema recognized that Freddy Krueger was their most marketable asset. This shift in marketing philosophy influenced an entire generation of horror films, from Friday the 13th's Jason Voorhees to Chucky and beyond. The success of marketing Freddy as a dark celebrity proved that audiences wanted memorable monsters they could both fear and admire. This approach transformed horror villains from faceless threats into branded characters with merchandising potential and sequel possibilities. Bonus fact: Freddy Krueger was almost a completely different monster. Here's the most shocking fact of all. In Wes Craven's original concept, Freddy Krueger wasn't burned at all. The initial script described him as a pale, thin man in a dark coat who looked more like a Victorian undertaker than a burn victim. The burns, the boiler room setting, and even the child killer backstory were added during rewrites when Craven decided the character needed a more compelling origin story. The razor glove was inspired by Craven's memory of watching his cat extend and retract its claws, combined with primitive human fears of being slashed by predators. If Craven had stuck with his first instinct, we might have gotten a completely different kind of nightmare, one that looked more like a gothic ghost story than the industrial horror masterpiece we know today. A Nightmare on Elm Street proved that genuine innovation in horror comes not from bigger budgets or flashier effects, but from understanding the primal fears that unite us all. Wes Craven's desperate gamble to save his career accidentally created a new mythology that continues to terrify audiences decades later. What other horror classics do you want us to investigate? Let us know in the comments. And remember, in the world of filmmaking, sometimes the most terrifying stories happen behind the camera. Sweet dreams, everyone.